There we go. And we should be live now. And if you click in the top right there in the comments section, you should see when people comment. It'll pop up if you want to see what people are saying.
Okay.
Although sometimes it is a little distracting to read all the comments flying up at once. So whereabouts are you located?
I am in Oregon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for getting up early with us this morning.
Yeah, I was going to say this is early.
It's early, very early. So
I'm here. So
I really appreciate you doing that. It's nice to see you.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's great to see you. I've watched you. I've watched some of your interviews, and I love what you do, and I'm happy to be here. So
thank you. It's a wonderful community. You know, we're just a bunch of starseeds and light workers that like to share ideas, and we just, yeah, we back each other up with our knowledge and our our happy vibes as much as we can.
Well, it's nice to be in a community where we all talk the same talk and are interested in the same things. You know, sometimes when you do this work, your friends look at you a little weird, you know, some of the people you grew up with, or, you know, I mean, I remember when I first got into this, it was kind of like, you do what? And what? And energy stuff. It's like, yeah, I don't know. So, you know, it's good to find your tribe.
And I wonder, so if you meet somebody on the street and they say, "What do you do for work, Patty?" How do you describe what you do to somebody that has no idea about all these things?
I usually start very broad, because if I start by saying I do past life work, it's like it may be done before it's over. But I usually start by saying, well, I'm an energy healer. And then that will, if they're not familiar at all, they'll say, what's an energy healer? And I'll say, well, I work with your energy field, your chakras, your auras, to rebalance your energies. And I happen to start by extracting some past life karma that you hold. And they're like, whoa, what?
Everybody's got that.
And I kind of ease them into it. And then we go from there. So.
How exciting. This is something that we love learning about, is other past lives, and especially the baggage that we tend to bring between those lives, because many of us are trying to offload that baggage right now.
Well, that's the thing, and we all have baggage, me included. I had a lot to unload when I first started this work, gosh, 15 years ago now. You know, when I first got into this, I didn't even know what energy healing was. I'd never even heard the term. And I'm like, what is that? It was very, very much a synchronicity. I didn't set out to do this work. I didn't choose to do this work. I definitely was led
you.
to it. Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, and it started, you know, after I had breast cancer. This was back in 2007. And, you know, I up until then, I really wasn't living for myself. I was very much in a state of anxiety and overwhelm. I was very much a people pleaser. You know, all those types of a lot of the similar things why people come to me now, try to overcome that, because that keeps you in states of lack that resonate to those energies. And somehow, even though I wasn't doing energy work then, I kind of intellectually knew that, right? It's like, I've got to get over this, but how? I don't know how. I just know how I am. I know how I grew up. I know how my family was. So I don't know how to do this. And I also kind of instinctively knew that it was remaining in that state that allowed for something like breast cancer to settle in my body. I just kind of knew that, but I'm like, I didn't know how to work with that information. But I knew that I needed to make myself happy, because no one was going to do it for me. I had to set some boundaries. I had to start saying no. I had to start saying, hey, this is my life. I was married at the time, 2 young kids. And I'm like, hey, you know, I've got to do this. I was not with a really supportive spouse, but I decided that because usually I would always just go along. And I just said, no, I have to do this. I have to make myself happy. And one way to do that is to have a career. That was my thing that I wanted to pursue, right? We all need to pursue whatever we feel that passion is. right? And I'm like,
Mhm.
I want to have a career. And I came from a background in advertising and marketing, and I didn't love it. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Um, so I decided that I wanted to be an esthetician, a skincare person. So I put myself through school. It was night school because I had 2 young kids. I wanted to be home during the day. And I just like grinded it out, for like 4 nights a week I was in school. I'd be home all day with the kids. And when I would go back and forth to school, because I had an hour commute each way, I'd memorize my work that I needed to do, and I'd recite it on the way back. I mean, I was just on a mission. And I hope you don't mind me launching into all of this.
No, I'm loving it. I love hearing
Okay.
backstories. We all have a good one. So please, by
Well, it
all
is a
means.
backstory, right? It's like, people just say, "You do energy work?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, you have no idea how I got here." Um, so I decided, I just pushed through, and I got my license, and I opened up, and I was really, I was, knock on wood, very successful from day one. But it was interesting because I also knew that I just needed to kind of change my mindset. And so part of the things that I would listen to on my commute, in addition to my homework, was I got some meditation CDs for myself. I'm dating myself, right? It's CD. No one listens to CDs anymore, right? But I got some CDs. I stuck them in there, and one
You
of
didn't
them
say
was
cassette.
well, one of them was Wayne Dyer. And
Oh,
are you
I love
familiar with the name
Wayne. He's
Wayne
wonderful.
Dyer?
Yes, of course. Yes.
And
One of my favorite quotes.
yeah, and well, I love him, and he just made so much sense to me. And one of the things that he said, I'll never forget. This was like one of those pivotal aha moments. It was just one phrase he said: "When you change the way you look at things, the
The
things
way
you
you
look
look at
at
it. Mhm.
change." And
Yes.
I sat there. I remember I was a red light waiting for it to change, and I'm like, "Oh my god! I mean, I can actually have my own perspective on things. I don't have to believe in what my parents did. I don't have to listen to what my spouse thinks I should do." I mean, it was just like this, for me, it was an aha moment. So I
One
went
of
with
my
that.
biggest aha moments was thanks to him. It's how people treat you is their karma, how you respond is yours.
Yes, and and
That was
that's
one of
the
my biggest. Mm.
basis for everything. How because with karma, you have to change your perspective. You have to change the way you're looking at it in order to make best use of what's taking place at the moment.
Yes.
And so as I did my aesthetics work, I was like, it wasn't even a month later that I opened my business. I was introduced to a Reiki master. Um, and I like, it was a networking meeting. I almost didn't go to, but I did, because I felt like this little nudge. It's like, Patty, you got to go. This is, it came in weird, and I'm like, okay, I'll just go. So I met this Reiki master. I'm like, what's Reiki? Was that a massage? And they're like, oh no, it's energy healing. And that's why I'm like, well, what's that? I've no clue, no clue. And so I just had a mini session from this Reiki master, and I was highly skeptical. I'm like, that you're gonna
They
put your
usually
hands on me?
are.
Yeah,
When you
I'm
start
like,
with Reiki,
'cause I'm kinda,
you're gonna get
I'm not,
your hands.
I like spiritual stuff, but I'm very non-woo, and I'm like, "You're gonna put your hands on me and heal me, okay." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever, I'll humor you, I'll have a session." Well, oh my god, the next day I was just so much better. I had so much more energy. I felt better than I had in years, and I'm like, "I gotta do this energy thing." So that's kind of started my foray into energy work. And I immediately got certified. I started offering that during my aesthetic sessions, and then that's what got me into past lives. Because after doing a number of energy healing sessions, and I was highly intuitive, had no clue I was intuitive. That's the other thing about our soul gifts. I talk about our soul gifts is that they won't always present themselves on their own. You have to kind of go there and realize, I can do this. I'm good at this. I mean, I had no clue I could do that. And it started about a few years after I was doing my energy work. I had a client who I saw the reason that she was having issues started in a past life. And so I did a bunch of research on past lives. And who's the first author that I looked up or that came up when I did a search was Dolores Cannon. Never heard
Oh,
of
good old
Dolores Cannon.
Dolores.
I know. And I'm like, oh my God. And I just like would get her books and I would just devour them. Like, oh my God, this is just like, it's amazing. And I think it was one of her books where I came upon the term Akashic Records.
Yeah.
And I said,
Talk about them quite a
that's what I
bit.
need to do. That's it.
Love
And it
that.
was just like this energy. It was just this knowing, when you're on task, you just like, that's it. And I had zero question about it. And I'm like, that's what I need to do. And Megan says, I love listening to your story. Like you said, Laura, we all have stories. We don't just fall into this, especially when I believe, especially when you're healing from negative patterns, especially when you have no idea exactly what it is you should be doing or how it should look. I mean, talk about a leap of faith. I had no clue. I was operating on, I have no idea how this is going to work, but I know I don't want to be where I was before. And I'm just going to go for it. And it was just one after the other, after the other. And I was like, and even then when I was doing the past life stuff, I had this, I mean, that was 8 or 9 years ago when I started going into just so only past life work. I had no idea where it would take me. No idea. I just went with it.
Somewhere exciting, I swear.
It's been very
thing.
exciting. This has given this work, which like I said, I always had an interest in spiritual work, but I never thought I could do it as a career, has changed my life dramatically. I mean, I know I have changed my life so dramatically. It would never have happened in this lifetime for me if I didn't have my work in Akashic Records. I can profoundly say that. And that's where it can help you, the Akashic Records, because first of all, I'm assuming everybody knows what the Akashic Records is. Maybe we should.
By all means, you can start from the beginning. I'm sure there's at least one person here. We have occasionally people that are just starting out their spiritual journey. So it's always helpful to explain it for those who are just starting out.
Well, the Akashic Records is the record of the soul, essentially. And it holds all the information. So the Akashic Records are infinite. It holds all the information about the universe, right? Anything that you want to know about past, present, or future in the universe is available there. And so every soul has its own Akashic Record, and it can be accessed intuitively. We all have, by divine right, access to our soul level information. You just have to learn how to get there, right? And then what to do once you get there. And it will tell you, it answers all the questions of why, why is this happening in my life? Why do I have this limiting belief? Why do I have this negative tendency? What's the root cause of this issue? Why is this relationship the way it is? Why can't I attract the right partner? Why do I have money? I mean, any issue
Anything
that you have,
know.
you will find the root cause. Because I think a lot of people struggle with why. So they can't get past the why. It's like, I can't start working
That's
on
the
it until
biggest
I know
thing
why.
children ask. And we get annoyed with children when they do that, don't they?
Yes.
Why? Well, yeah, they have every right to ask why. Of course they want to know why. I think adults kind of get the why beaten out of us.
Well, and sometimes we just don't have those answers. We our soul is a continuum, and we don't live long enough in one lifetime to see either why it started, how it started, and how it's going to end. Or sometimes what's really important to people is, well, are the other people who played a role in my choosing this, whether I was forced into it or not, are they paying for what they did? Right? Are they going to balance it out? And we all need to really believe that life is about balance. Life is about balancing the negative, and it just happens in different times at different stages for everybody. And once you believe that and truly understand that, because we can't heal anyone else but ourselves. We can't change anyone else but ourselves. And so when we change us and worry less about everyone else and what they need to do and what they don't need to do and who needs to do this and this, it's like when we align to our highest good and our soul gifts and clear our karma, whether it involves another person. Well, it always involves somebody else. That's the Earth School, where relationships and karma. But it doesn't matter what the other person's doing or not doing. It matters what you do with your part of the karma. Kind of like, you said, how you respond is your karma. I mean, how someone treated you is theirs. How you respond is yours. And it's always up to you to do your healing, regardless of what took place. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
that karma ties you to that person. You're not free of that lesson until the forgiveness and acceptance has been, reached.
Forgiveness and acceptance, I think, is part of it, but taking new action is huge part of that. It's one thing I think it's huge to forgive. And usually it's just about forgiving yourself for decisions that maybe you made in that moment. And yes, it's also about maybe if you were perpetrated against, to forgive the perpetrator as well, because it's like first of all, you understand that there is balance. And for every negative thing that's been perpetrated against you, there will be balance. But we live in polarity. When we come to Earth School, we buy into the fact that negativity happens here.
Life isn't fair, as my dad would say.
It is not fair.
Life isn't fair.
by design, it's not fair. So that you're blessed with free will. So you can take that unfairness and turn it on its head and, go for it and do amazing things with it. And the Akashic records, like I said, it's just because a lot of us are just so blind to our karma. Sometimes we know
any more apparent though than with familial relationships. I think that's the most glaringly obvious cases of because when you have somebody in your family that you're constantly butting heads with, that always seems to have a bit of a chip on their shoulder towards you, and you don't have an understanding why, there may be a subconscious reason for that even they do not know.
Oh, totally. Well, and so, yeah, I mean, you choose before you incarnate and you make your life plan. It's like, okay, guys, what am I going to work on in this lifetime? And maybe it's always around self-empowerment of some kind. And there's lots and lots and lots of different
setting boundaries is a good one.
Setting boundaries, self-reliance, self-worth. And so if you have lots of karma around lack of self-worth, you're going to choose a family who's going to make you feel incredible lack of self-worth. It's not the opposite. You don't go in getting the love you need. You go in getting a family in a situation where you got to find it in yourself. And that's what it's all about. And that's what you buy into. So it's like, so you can't be disappointed, right? It's like, well, okay, I'm here. And when you're young, you don't think that way. You don't have that adult mindset. You just know, and it comes through being karmically aligned to a family that will potentially treat you that way. You feel this horrible lack of self-worth, but you always have a choice. And when you're young, you don't always think that. Right? It's about getting older and overcoming those and taking new empowered action, and then recognizing that, well, everyone comes to the relationship with their karma. Everyone just picks right back up where they left off. And
I think one lifetime where you really have done some serious damage to all the people around you, it could take you countless lifetimes to pay that back. Just one life could cost you 100 more.
Yes, it can. There is called the karmic debt. Yes, for sure. And depending on the severity and depending on what you're working on, there is a heavy karmic debt. And some people just take longer to recognize that they're creating their own misery and misery for other people. There's no ownership or responsibility. And there is a universal law of responsibility. So some people just don't always recognize that. But the
I
Akashic
shared a
records,
post the other day. There were so many people that got offended because I said something along the lines of, you choose your family, you
oh yeah,
plan who you're going to incarnate
oh,
with. And about half of the people commenting were quite offended reading that alone. They were just
oh
like, I
no.
never would have chosen this. Never.
Oh, absolutely, you choose that. See, that's the paradigm shift you need to make in understanding the physical realm. Is that you don't get what you want, you get what you need. And yes, there are varying factors of that, and there's varying levels, but you don't know anyone's karma. You don't know where it started. You don't know why it started. And once you know why, it's like, oh, no wonder. No wonder. And it's not punitive. It's not because you're a bad person. It's because you're a wonderful, loving aspect of the creator who's here to learn from negativity, because that's why you're here. We learn way faster from negativity,
You could have
ideally.
gone somewhere else on another planet where it was all fluffy bunnies and
Yeah,
rainbows, and you would not have accomplished anywhere near as much as if
that's
you
right.
had come down here.
And the soul does choose where it wants to go. But laws of karma say that once you create karma third dimensionally, you will go back to the third dimension to clear it. Whether it's Earth or not is another, but usually it's Earth, and that's where we go. And then we can choose again through our free will. It's like, look, dad was verbally abusive to me. Mom was unemotionally available to me. My sibling abused me. What is this teaching me about how can I grow? How can I be stronger? And how can I rise above it? That's the type of question you want to ask. I realize it's very, very hard when you're in the thick of it emotionally, because you feel like a victim. You do. I mean, how can you not? That's the initial first reaction. It's very, very justified. So, but you start if you're willing to say, take a neutral stance. That's where emotions get us in trouble as humans. Spirit's the first to say that human emotions and the ego can really, really get you in trouble. So when you can connect to the higher mind and the higher consciousness, where it's all about love, and being part of the whole that we are, that gives you a different ability to look at your life differently.
Yes. So, for example, let's say somebody comes to you because they're experiencing something like the dark night of the soul. They feel lost in life and they need some sort of a beginning direction, some more breadcrumbs to start following. Would the Akashic Records be able to offer that?
Oh, yes, definitely. So the way I approach a work, and I see someone that's asking, please ask Patty what her process is. And yes, there are many methods to access the Akashic Records. I teach one, but there's many, right? It has to be whatever works for you. I will start, because people usually will come to me at that point and they're just stuck. They're overwhelmed. They can't create. They can't move forward. They're very unhappy. It could be that their marriage has problems. Now they have money issues. It started with familial issues, and karma just grows like that. It has arms.
Mm,
And so whatever you don't take care of, I always say avoidance is the absolute worst strategy, right? But whatever you don't deal with just grows. And so by the time people are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, I even have one client who's almost 80. It's like, it overwhelms you and it completely stops you. And so we're all like these layers, right? We're layers. And so the first thing that I will do when I go into an Akashic record is identify their soul gifts, right? This is who you are at soul level. This is how you're designed to look at your life, because we're all designed to look at it very differently, right? You might have a very compassionate nature, and so you're going to look at people differently, whereas if you're designed to be very emotional, pushing people's buttons, right? Sometimes you're designed
Mhm.
to be very much pushing people's buttons, asking the hard questions, looking at life from a different perspective. People with very strong communication skills often go in that. So it just depends on who you are at soul level and what your energies are and how you're designed to look. That, first of all, is huge, because you're not going to change your basic nature, but you want to give yourself grace for the positive aspects of those gifts and the potential downsides of those gifts if you use them against yourself. If you're a highly compassionate individual, you might end up overgiving to the point where you're constantly depleted, constantly. So you've got
That's a big
to
one for
manage.
us light workers. Yeah, a lot of people are
Yes.
that the white knight complex, where you feel like you needed a savior and you didn't get one. So now you try to be that savior for other people, and it
And you
does
can't.
burn people out. You burn the candle on both ends constantly with that one.
Well,
Yeah.
and that just creates enabling. It creates people to act. That's really a good way for light workers to look at that. Is, first of all, you want to help them heal themselves. You can't do it for them. You can't, because you go in those depleted
Otherwise, they
states.
may have to come back and do it again. If you do their work for
Oh,
them, they may have
constantly.
to come back again. Yeah.
Well, and then you create karma for yourself when you enable. And you don't think of it as enabling,
Mhm.
but if you try to do it for them, I see this a lot with parents and kids especially, but depending on who you are, it's like, look, they need to experience their consequences of their actions and know that they can figure it out and turn it around. If you always catch them, they will never learn. They will always take your energy and you will always be exhausted. And neither one of you is benefiting. So light workers especially, and this was actually one of the main reasons I happily moved from doing Reiki only to Akashic work, because I found that when people would come to me for Reiki, which I did for years, I even taught Reiki, they weren't making changes. They would come to me for an energy fix and go, oh, wow, that feels good. And they'd go home and do the exact same thing they were always doing. And they never changed. And finally, when I was doing the Akashic work holds your feet to the fire. Yeah. It's like, well, what have you done since our last session? Have you upheld boundaries? Have you said no? Have you quit that soul sucking job that you've had for 20 years and complain about? Have you started looking at things that create your joy? Have you gotten yourself out of that relationship? I don't know, whatever it is. Because until you make the change, it counts, but not fully. Right? It's like
Yeah.
one thing to say, okay, I'm going to uphold good boundaries, but then you never do. It doesn't count.
The trophy for trying is much smaller.
It
It's
is. Well, and
like,
it's a
well,
start. If
you
you've
get a
never done it,
participation trophy, but you don't get the accomplishment.
well, because you're always going to be tested. It's like, okay, I've cleared this karma in my Akashic record, and I know I need to have better boundaries, but I'm just going to go do this anyway because it feels better. Well, you've just fallen back into old patterns. And at first you get
Mm.
rewarded, because especially if it's new and you've never done it. But oh boy, are you going to get someone else back in your space who's going to push your boundaries? And it's like, universe is like, okay, Laura, you said you were going to uphold boundaries. Let's see how you do with this person. Because we're physical people. We have physical bodies. It's physical action that counts the loudest in terms of clearing your karma. So until you
Beautiful.
do that, and then you continue, that's your go-to, is from now on, I'm going to uphold good boundaries, and you don't back down and fall into old patterns, you don't have to repeat it again.
Wow, there's a lot of people that have needed to hear that for quite a few incarnations now, because it reminds me of that one. There was this one session that Dolores did where it was in a Bedouin village, and this young woman was the messenger of this village, and she ran off to go deliver a message, but didn't make it in time for this message to be delivered, which is very important. So the messenger raced back, and the tribal elder sacrificed, basically sentenced them to death for not being, to not doing what they were told to do. And Dolores asked this client, why would this be the one incarnation of all the incarnations you could have chosen to show us? why did you choose to show me this one? And it was because the father that she had in this lifetime was the same tribal elder that sacrificed, basically
Yes.
sentenced her to death. And
Yes.
she said, why would you choose to incarnate with your murderer? And
Yes.
that's because they're repairing the karma, because
Yes.
she is supposed to learn forgiveness and acceptance, and he's supposed to learn compassion and understanding, and how to give and receive love. And so she asked, how many incarnations has she tried to learn this lesson with this spirit? And she said, this is now the sixth
Yeah.
incarnation that she's had. And she said, well, how do we clear all this? Because she doesn't want to do this anymore. She's just done. She doesn't want to keep incarnating with the same spirit, waiting for him to get it right eventually, So this higher self just said, you have to forgive. You have
Yes.
to set boundaries. You have to remove yourself from that, because anytime that you feel, well, he owes me, he
Yes.
needs to make it up to me,
That's right.
that's when you're holding on to that, and you will continue with that person for multiple
Yes.
incarnations. But
Yes.
if you step away and you remove yourself and you say, I forgive you, I accept you, and even if they are like, well, I don't forgive you,
Right.
they can work it out with somebody else. You're free.
Yeah. Yeah. They're going to go on and do until they learn, if at all.
Exactly.
Yes. I had a number of incarnations that were similar where, I was this highly empowered spiritual person, didn't know, and then, had my life cut short or sent into exile or whatever by a male, because they either feared my energy or they, felt I would, had made a mistake or whatever. So I had to overcome that. So I incarnated with very dominating men, but I chose them. And then I played small. So, that was part of my coming into my
You were
own
playing that
spiritually.
role that you were used to playing.
That's right. Or, people, you mentioned family members. A lot of times you will incarnate with the same family members in order to learn a lesson. But oftentimes you change roles. And, I had a client who had a very difficult sibling who is messed up, became a drunk. And he said, well, your parents let him get away with stuff. He was just really, really angry about it, just pissed off. And, at first you can understand that, right? Because it's like when you grow up and you're like, well, he gets away with everything and that's not right. And he just felt very much like he was always the parent and this one got away with it. Well, in previous lives, this is the first time they were the siblings. In past lives, he was the wife. The younger brother who's getting away with stuff was the husband, who was constantly having problems then, and the parents were the kids. And so it's like, oh my God, this was like such a shift. He's like, well, no wonder I feel like I have to parent my parents. We're not out of this dynamic yet. If there's been a number of periods of lifetimes where you're the parent, that's you start there. Right. And then the brother who always get away with everything was a very unreliable, almost abusive father. And as the wife, had no choice. He was stuck, which happens a lot with women in past life. So he's stuck. So it's like he gets away with everything. He's failure as a father. So now they just switch roles. So, and I think
I
he
know
was able
so
to.
many siblings that argue like married couples. That's why I
Yes.
stopped
Yes.
laughing.
Yes.
That makes so much sense.
Yes. And it is. And once he saw that, and he's like, and we were even able to talk about the types of arguments that we had. And it was like, oh my God, it's like so similar to all these past lives. I'm like, yeah, this is why we just don't see where it starts. You just feel like you've been victimized, stuck in this family and can't, and it's like, no, let your brother work out his issues, forgive your parents for whatever dynamic that they're keeping going, and just pull yourself back. And
I think I might have divorced my sister in a past life. I'm starting to realize that might have been
you probably did.
From day one, my sister and I have not gotten along, and so it makes you wonder what's going on there.
Well, and I've also seen past lives and siblings like that where one worked for the other. Maybe you were, and sometimes the gender matters, sometimes it doesn't. But if you were like both males and you worked for your sister and she was very domineering, and now you've come in as
Remember
siblings.
that resentment.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always a reason. There's always a reason. I mean, and so kind of going back to how we started this is like, how do I do the reading? So I always start out by, this is who you are at soul level. This is how you're meant to look at life. So honor that. That's not going to change. And then you want to use the positive aspects. And then I work with the spirit guides, their spirit guide team, and they give me the information and what they need to hear and in what order. So usually we go to the core of the onion, because right, usually we're this thing. So we'll go to the one heart of the matter that's causing you the most issue, no matter what life area we're talking about. And it could be something dramatic, like, you said that Dolores revealed this. So then there's layers from that, right? That could be the real heart of the thing that she came in this lifetime to resolve, but she's probably still doing those tendencies with her family, with a spouse, with her children, with her money, with her job. It's just, so all of that has to be worked through karmically, because what we do in one, we do in all. Rarely are we different, we perpetuate our karma. And that's how you get to a point where you feel profoundly stuck and can't move forward, because it's like, it's just everywhere. And you start to slowly unwind it in each life area. And then at some point, people are just off and running. And it's different for everybody, but it's just wonderful to see, because it's not like they're never going to have issues again, but they're unstuck, and they can see and they understand that every choice has a consequence, positive or negative. And the negative ones that hold you back are just, if you don't hit them head on, life is short. Suddenly 20 years have gone by and you're still having the same arguments and trying to change people. And it's like, why? Move on, overcome, let people be who they are, and you take care of yourself, and the rest will fall into place. But that's hard.
I think
that's
this is
hard.
why so many of these, I think that's why they choose to be in a blood family relationship. You know what I mean? Because you can't escape that very easily. It's not like somebody, you could be a neighbor down the street. You can be like, I hate that guy. I'm just blocking him. I don't ever look at him again. This is somebody you have to live with. Somebody that you have, you know what I mean? Like genetic ancestry with, that you guys have. It's not easy, especially when there's someone in a carer situation, which is a great point that Ava is also asking about. If you are a family member that is, has the responsibility of caring for another family member, there's probably karma in that too.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Again, when wanting to heal and help someone is one thing. It's always about, well, how much and to what degree, right? Again, how much is too much? Am I giving up my incarnation to help this person to an unhealthy degree so that I'm in negative states and this person isn't trying to empower themselves in their own situation? Right? And oftentimes I see people incarnate in marriages where they're really codependent. And then maybe they were in a past life where a sister was a caretaker for a brother, and then the brother never helped himself. And so guess what? Now we're going to incarnate as married couple, and I'm going to take care. And it's not like caring for someone is karmic. Again, it's not what I'm saying. It's like, to what degree that you deplete yourself and give up your incarnation to try to help the other person, and then they remain disempowered. Yeah. And that's karma. And it's not bad. You aren't a horrible person. You're just giving too much, and that's what you're not. You're here to live your life. You're here to live your highest power. And part of it could be compassionate care. But again, there's this distinction, kind of like we talk about the light workers. It's like, well, I need to draw a boundary. I can't do it for them. I'm not available 24/7. You can't email me 7 days a week, 5 times a day and ask me questions. It's like, you need to go do your healing work, right? And I need to step back and uphold boundaries so that I can help more people.
Yes.
Right?
And it's also true. Dolores was also explaining in one of her books that there's a longer line of people waiting for a disabled body than a healthy body, because You
Yep.
learn more through coming in disabled than you were if you were to have a healthy body. So many people who are also caretakers are also people who are there as like a support team. So it may not be a karmic thing, but it could be you signed up for part of the
Absolutely.
challenge too.
Yes. So you could either be what I call a primary player or a supportive player. And sometimes a supportive player is one who will come in some capacity where there is either a birth defect or maybe stillborn. Sometimes happens in stillborns where your soul is playing a role somehow in your own karma, but you're helping someone else have a learning experience. You're helping someone else clear karma. Okay. So you're in that supporting role. So, and that's another reason is like, you can't always assume, oh, well, I did this in a life, so now I have to do that. Sometimes you're in a supporting role.
You might be racking up good karma.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
'Cause
Yes.
that's also a thing. A lot of us think that karma is a consequence, but really
No.
it's what goes around comes around. What you give out comes back to you.
Yeah, there's positive karma and then there's negative karma. And it's not judgmental, right? It's not like, oh no, 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 because it's so individual. I might need to express a lot of rage to finally get me out of negative karmic patterns. Whereas someone else who's expressing rage, that could be just a continuation of their negative karma. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't know. Or the homeless person on the street, you don't know. They might be having a holiday life. Not to say that they're
Yeah,
having
that could be a resting life compared to what they've been through in other ones. Yeah.
right. Maybe because we don't come in every single life with really a real heavy karmic debt. There are, I usually see cycles of like every 5 lifetimes or every 10 lifetimes. Okay, we're going to pick up on this karmic pattern that you haven't managed to clear for 100 lifetimes. Guess what? Now we're on lifetime 10 and we're going to try this again. So,
Mm.
it's not like you have, sometimes it's repetitive. I mean, everyone's really, really different, but you do come in at some point to work on those things. But sometimes you have, like I would say, a holiday life or just a low karmic debt life.
It's
Versus,
hard not to compare ourselves to those
yes,
people because it looks so easy, doesn't it?
yeah, it does.
Their lives look so easy and nice, but while the rest of us are over here like sweaty browed and dirty and exhausted, and they're all just having fun. And yeah, but but we don't know what they've been through in those other lives. We don't
That's the
know
thing.
how much
That's
they've earned that rest.
right. That's the thing, is you can never judge, and you just never know where someone has started and what they're here to work on, and why someone passes early and why someone else passes late, why someone who's so good gets ill and passes, and seemingly negative people, live and have that. You just don't know, but there's always a reason and there's always a story behind it, and you'd be amazed at where sometimes the stories start. It's just, you can't make this stuff up. It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's like
I
one
know
big soap
it's
opera.
much more interesting than Hollywood. This stuff is
It
so much more
is.
fascinating and deep than anything that they could come up with.
It is. I mean, we have lives like that, and someone asked about a past life here that said, well, what do you do if it happened in that past? One of the things that we need to remember too about past lives, especially, hundreds of lifetimes ago or thousands of lifetimes ago, is that, life was very different. It was very brutal, very violent. There was a
Wonder
lot of
why there's so
power.
many people having resting lives now, because
Yes.
society has changed to the point where we don't have to struggle as hard just to get by, or at least not
Right.
all of us anyway. Yes.
Yes. Well, and so what we accept now is very different than how we used to be. And so a lot of people were forced into their negativity. You don't speak your truth, you get your head cut off, right?
Yeah,
You don't.
or safe.
You marry who you're told you're going to marry. You do what you're told. And even when you do, you're told sometimes you're going to get killed. I mean, it was a very, very scary time. But the thing about karma is that even if you were forced into it, it still represents karma in need of being balanced out. So,
You still planned that life. You still had
yeah,
that plan for that experience.
and you're hanging on to it, and maybe you outgrew it 20 lifetimes ago, but there's still an element of it that you haven't cleared. So it's going to still play out in present life, albeit present day scenarios,
Yeah.
right? And
Well, one of my clients yesterday I cleared, she was a slave in a past life.
yeah,
And it was a past life energetic resonance that was still hanging around, and it was causing her to have fear of speaking up, fear of breaking rules, fear of a lot of things. And that clearing that
absolutely.
energy allows her to be more of herself and to basically, there's still shackles on some people in their minds
Yes. And see, that's
without
the
even
difference.
knowing it.
If you clear it, but then she has to take new action that resonates to the opposite, right? So if she has lots of fear or slave-like behaviors, right? Like maybe you're slave to your spouse, slave to your work, slave to your mother or father. I mean, again, those storylines, it's like you need to start pulling back by taking new action, right? It's like, I'm not going to slave. Where am I still a slave? How can I undo it? It's not enough to just know that you have to go and take the next step.
Oh, I just had the deepest thought too, because if you think about it, if you're healing this aspect of yourself now, and that past life is still happening somewhere else, you can send healing to that version of yourself where you're
Yes.
still a slave somewhere.
Right. Or that brings in the concepts of parallel lives. So
Yes.
we all come in with parallel lives, and that's by design, right? Source is kind of like, well, if we're going to go to all this effort to put you in a body, let's do it more. Let's have a few of them going on, a few scenarios playing out that are similar, so we can get jump start on all the clearing. So you could, and parallel lives is a really tricky thing, because the idea behind it is that you're in the same situation, but you're making very different choices regarding that same situation in each different parallel life. I had a client who deep parallel life karma that needed clearing. I needed to clear the other life because she just could not get a job and when she had a job, she was always for a female, and it was horrible. It was horrible. And it was like this woman was, brutal and mean and held her back and, didn't let her move forward. And it's like, this was the story of her life. And I think she was well into her 40s when she came to see me. And I'm like, well, she had a number of past lives where she was still allowing that negativity, because she would fight back. And then she's like, but it's not changing. I'm like, well, look at all these parallel lives. You're making this choice here. You're making this choice here. And they're like, once I cleared those, she was like, had just this huge trajectory forward with, she got a much better job. Now she's, a manager. And, I mean, it just changed her life. But parallel, I mean, who would even think that parallel lives would affect you right now? And they do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's
Mhm.
not just parallel lives in other times too, because all lives are happening simultaneously because time doesn't exist.
Correct.
This is why the Akashic Records has such detailed information about all of these lives, because all of that is recorded. Every thought, every action, every, memory that you've had in every of these incarnations are still stored somewhere, and you can access
Absolutely.
that.
Well, and it's all at once. And see, that's the thing. It's like, that's why you can go in and say, what is the root cause of this? And it will take you to a life where, well, this is where it started. It may have started very innocently, or something that was, congruent to the time that it played out, and you still haven't resolved it. So, this is what you can do. These are actions you can take to start to resolve it. Because sometimes you either, kind of like me, it's like, I know what I'm doing is wrong. I just don't know how to fix it. How the heck do I fix this? How do I overcome my lack of self-worth? How do I stop being so dang anxious about what people think of me? How do I do that? And it starts with the beliefs, right? And so mantras became my buddy, right? And mantras are there to help you reprogram the brain, because the brain's looking for what it knows, right? The brain looks for what it knows. and what it's used to. So if you start feeding it something new, the first reaction that your brain has is, oh, that's wrong. You're unworthy. You're undeserving. That's at least what you've taught me. So when you start feeding it things like, no, you are worthy, you are deserving, at first it's very dissonant. It's very like, no, that's wrong. And you really have to just keep at it. You have to keep going. And at some point through neuroplasticity, that brain says, okay, you're right. You are more deserving. So now that you're more deserving, what new actions can you take? So once you build up your idea that you're worthy and deserving, if that's what you're working on, then it's like, okay, so, and that could take months, years, whatever, just working on the idea that you're worthy and deserving. Then it's like, okay, what can you do in your relationship that equates to worthy and deserving? Well, maybe I need to start speaking up. I was very afraid of speaking up. I started speaking up. I'm like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. All right. So now that, and then you just keep going on that new energy that you've started. And it can take years to fully resolve a lot of these things. But a lot of people either give up, they stop because it's easier to stay where they are. But it doesn't fully clear the negativity. It will always come back in some form, especially to the physical body. Whatever you don't heal karmically has the potential to go to the physical body and create disease. And it's like the last resort, whether through multiple lifetimes, and now in this lifetime, you're going to get potentially a disease, or in a present life, something that you do repeatedly over and over and over and over again, whatever you believe, could potentially go to that part of the body and start creating a disease, because it has to go somewhere. Right? Karma doesn't go away because you wanted to, or because you avoid it. It does the opposite. It goes deeper, which is to the physical body. Yeah.
Yes. And then it can even manifest as illness that a lot of people are experiencing.
Yes.
Cancer is a big one, because cancer is rooted in anger quite often.
Well, and I had breast cancer, and breast cancer is a fourth chakra issue, right? So getting into the chakras, and karma gets lodged in the chakras, so it causes you to attract similar situations through law of attraction, giving you an opportunity to change your karma. And so,
how many people say, I keep attracting the same kind of person in my life, the same kind of man? Yeah, that's why.
Because you're not changing. You're just hoping you're different, or thinking you're different, or telling yourself. See, that's the thing too about like telling yourself, right? If I really want a new romantic partner in my life, and I tend to date abusive guys, if I don't work on my karma and I just say, well, I'm different and I'm better, but you haven't cleared it, well, karma is going to send you another abusive guy. It can't not, because what you hold is real. And so it's the karma that's lodged that says, okay, I put up with abuse. I put up with abuse. And so if you don't work through that by taking new action, you can't help but get the same vibrational type of person. It can't not be that way. So whatever you believe is true is what's going to go, right? Through the law of correspondence. What you believe to be true, what you feel to be true, is what's real. No matter how much you try to fake it, no matter how much you wish or say I'm different. No, it's not what's real.
Yeah.
And that's why they keep dating the same type of girl. So I had breast cancer as a fourth chakra issue. My relationships, it's the heart, it's relationship centered, and what you believe to be true, you get reflected in. And so I wasn't surprised that it was breast cancer, because relationships were always my challenge.
Yeah. Same for my father, and he passed away from melanoma. And, when it comes to setting boundaries and getting people to listen, you know what I mean? It's very difficult when you're at the point where you're getting sick, and then you realize that you should have done something and you should have released it. So for somebody that is struggling now with cancer, what would you say is a good way of starting that healing journey?
Just dropping all the negativity. I mean, one of the things that I recognize, because like I said, I was full of frustration. I was in a relationship that didn't serve me. I was always anxious. I was always angry. I was always frustrated. I just decided at that moment, and not to say that everyone that has cancer has those types of issues, right? I mean, everyone responds differently, but I knew that was for me. It's like, just release it. Just let it go. You can't change, no matter how frustrated or angry you get. You're not going to change people. You're not going to change what happened. You can only affect forward change. So release anything that's not serving you. Just drop it, right? Your fears, your anxieties, your I wish this person would change, any victim mindset, any negative coping mechanisms that you have. If you reach for a cigarette, if you reach for a drink, if you reach for food, whatever it is, it's like, well, why am I doing that? Why do I think I need this right now? Stop it, right? Identify all negativity and just for like, what can I do with where I'm at right now? When I was healing from breast cancer, I knew I wanted to do something else. So I spent the time that I was recuperating just a while, reading, studying. This is how I expect my life to go once I'm healed. I just kind of prepared myself for how I wanted to be, how I wanted my life to look moving forward. And I just let it go. And so that's the best thing you can do, is just let it go and start taking steps toward what you want your life to look like.
Oh, look at that. One of the comments just said, Lord of the Houses says, full moons are about, releasing what no longer serves you to make room for the things you want in your life. Excellent advice for the Scorpio full moon this evening.
Yay. Yes. And
releasing is not easy, but it is something that all of us can do. And journaling does help, writing it out. And I feel that just getting your thoughts down on paper does really help. Music is also what helps me. If I feel like there's something that is, I'm still dealing with emotionally, I try and find music that will match the vibration of what I'm feeling. And then I feel like it kind of,
it purges,
shakes it out, it purges it for me, and I can cry or whatever I have to do to get over it, and then I can just move on.
Yeah. And that's another thing that the Akashic records can tell you, is based on your unique blueprint and how you're designed, how are you best to process information and release it? And some people are meant to be very physical. Some people are meant to be very introspective. Some people are meant to be in touch more with nature and just get away and to work things out. Everybody's really, really different. So you want to honor that. If that's what works for you, you need to do that. But I would say that if you have a chronic repeating pattern that gets you in the same emotional state, you might want to say, okay, what I've been doing is helping, but it's not resolving the issue. So how can I change to resolve this issue, regardless of what the other person is doing? What can I do? And it's usually either about creating better boundaries, about releasing, forgiving, and moving on, usually. Yeah.
I had a great question. Megan wanted to know, what does one of your sessions look like?
Yeah. So, and I've switched from doing just single one-off readings. I might go back to that at some point, but I now do coaching, what I call coaching, healing and manifesting with your spirit guides, because it's your spirit guides who give me the information. It's not me. So, like I said, I would start with, okay, what is the intention that you want to create for yourself? And sometimes at the very beginning, people don't fully know. They just know they want to feel better. And I'm like, well, we need to have more of a, what is it that you want to create for yourself? Right. And then we're going to do some healing first as you think about what you want that to look like. And so then like I said, I will start by, and it's very non-woo. My sessions are very non-woo. They're very much like you and I talking right now. It's just not my style. I'm just information, right? I deliver. So I'm like, we talk about your gifts and how you're designed to look at the world. And then it's like, what is the major karma that we need to resolve first? And what does that look like for you? And then I'll always tell them, do you recognize how you're still doing that right now? What is it that, so I put their feet to the fire. It's like, so what do you recognize that you're doing this? And taking ownership is so huge to your clearing, right? And so huge to your ability to change, because, and I think that's one of the problems that people often have when working with the Akashic records, especially if you're trying to do self-healing, is that we often get in a state of denial, right? If you receive information, it's like, well, I'm not doing that. No, or that can't be right. No, I don't buy that. And then they just stop. Right. So having a stranger come in and say, well, this is what I'm finding. Do you recognize that you're doing that in your marriage? And this is yes. Yes. All right. And it's just you and me. Right. And I go, okay. And then we'll go through and resolve that. And so the guides will say, okay, this session, we're going to work on releasing self-doubt and self-worth. And then we're going to move on to the next session. We're going to work on healing patterns in your marriage. And then we'll talk about it. I'll say, hey, this is a past life you've had with your spouse. This is the choices that you made. Do you recognize these patterns? Usually it's yes, right? Sometimes it's helpful for the person if I can share with them the karma that their spouse is dealing with, or their karma that their father or mother or whoever is dealing with. There's lots of rules to follow when you're reading someone else's Akashic record who hasn't given you express permission, right? And the rule is you must have express permission, right? But sometimes the guides, depending on what that person's dealing with, will say, okay, we're going to allow a certain amount of information to flow through so that this person knows and understands the dynamic at work and why they're together without breaking, confidentiality, so to speak. So sometimes that can come through. And oftentimes I just had a session with a client who she just was in such deep negative fear about her son and her spouse that I'm like, okay, they allowed that through. They're like, this is what's happening. This is what they're dealing with. This is why you're in their life. That's why they're in yours. And it just brings such relief, right? And then slowly over time, and then I'll give them homework to do. And I'll say, and I'll do a session like every 4 to 5 weeks, so that gives them time to take new action on something. And they almost always come back to the next session with a story. You won't believe this happened. You won't believe that happened. I said this, I said that, this came. And the reason is that as you clear karma, the universe will give you something to deal with. It will say, okay, I know you say you're going to clear it, but are you going to do it? And there's always something that comes up. Always. Right? It's like if I clear someone from their spouse, they're going to say, oh my God, I just had the worst fight with my spouse. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I just cleared you. So now it's like, now you need to step into your power. Right? You need to step into your power. It doesn't mean you have a knockdown drag out. It means you stand your ground, you stay in your grace, you own your truth. And then the other person, the spouse, and she was one client, she was deathly afraid to stand up to her spouse. Deathly afraid. And he wasn't a bad person. It's just that was the dynamic. And I'm like, you're not giving him an opportunity to step up. If you don't stand your ground and state your case, how do you know that he's going to react negatively? You have no idea. You've never done it before. And I said, and I always do use the caveat, as long as you know you're safe, right? As long as you know you're safe. And so she wrote to me and she goes, Patty, he was so kind. I had no clue that he would actually respond that way. And I'm like, because you're keeping it at bay. You're not giving him a chance. You don't know what could happen. And they're like, there's just these massive breakthroughs, and they're like, oh my God, so now maybe I should stand up to my mother all these years. And that might end badly. That person has a 50-50 react positively, but you don't know. It doesn't matter. But people are so afraid that they just don't. And so they have these little breakthroughs. So that's what I mean. At some point, it's like the aha moments just take over, and they're like, I was way more stuck. I was not nearly as stuck as I thought I was. I was doing it to myself. And so that's how these sessions usually go. And then we start moving from clearing karma to start the manifesting process, which there's an A and a B. And it's not like you can't start manifesting while you're trying to clear karma, but I think when people are first starting out with healing and clearing work, they got to be really conscious of their karma and start taking new action before they try to manifest something new and different that they haven't tried to manifest. Like if someone wants a new romantic partner, well, they got to clear all their relationship karma. If they want a better job with more money, then they've got to work on their money karma. They've got to work on their whatever karma they have in their business before we can move forward there. Because you got to change your energy.
Would you consider vows to be a type of karma, or would they be something separate? Because we do carry vows over from other lives too. Like if we were to
Yeah.
take a vow of celibacy, a vow of poverty, and then you wonder why you're a broke 4-year-old virgin, and you find out
Yes. I was
why.
initially thinking marriage vows, and sometimes even those. But yes, vows are huge, and we often make vows without realizing we're making a vow. Right. And so if you say, well, I'm never going to date again, right? Or I'm never going to be in this situation again, that's a type of vow that you might regret. And then if you take action to support that vow, then guess what? You pass away, you don't resolve it. You're going to pick up where you left off and go, well, guess what? That vow you made 3 lifetimes ago is now putting you in this family, in this situation with this problem. It's like, oh my God.
Better watch your mouth, guys, and what you say. You never know how that's going to manifest.
Well, and that's what I mean. If you vow that, other people are more important than you, if you vow that, yeah, or you vow to be poor. I had one gal come to me who had with money issues, and the guides kept telling me she was using words to solidify the vow, which often, and I'm like, I would talk to her about this. I'm like, what are you saying to yourself every day? And she goes, oh, my husband and I, we laugh. We don't even have a nickel. That's like our famous saying we say to each other. We just laugh. We don't even have a nickel, 2 nickels to rub together. I'm like, oh my God, stop. Why are you doing that?
Worst thing you could say. It is, because honestly, then you're literally setting a lack mindset.
Totally. And it's like, how can you expect money to flow in if you laugh and have fun with the fact that you have no money?
Oh, people that say, I'll die alone. That's another one. I'm going to die alone. I hear that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
One, that's impossible. You're not going to die alone because you have your soul guides around you. You have your discarnate loved ones. You have your living, breathing family. So even if you do die somewhere alone, like in the woods somewhere, you're still going to have somebody with you. You're never, ever going to die alone. But if you were to say that and you convince yourself of this, and then you wonder why people just start leaving your life in droves.
Well, and that's why it's so important to examine your subconscious and unconscious beliefs and limiting truth, because, we talk ourselves into things, we buy into certain things, and then we're like, but why is this showing up? And it's like, well, what's your values? What are your beliefs? How do you live your life? And that dictates everything that can flow into your space. It's very important. I'm just looking at.
So Erin asked, can we recant or rescind it?
You can. I believe that that's a form of clearing, but it's so imperative that you follow it up with action. It's not just enough to say, I take that back. I mean, we can withdraw energy from timelines that are playing out. That's a whole. We could go on a whole other hour about timelines, but when you make a decision and you give energy to a choice and allows that to play out, right? Maybe you made a vow in this lifetime. Well, I'm always going to be my brother's keeper, right? When you're young, and say, I'm just going to always be my brother's keeper. Well, and then that brother is constantly taking from you, and you're like constantly, putting your family and everything else last to help this brother. You can say, all right, I recant that. I pull that back. But if you don't follow it through with action, it's meaningless. So it's very important that you support it through new action. Yeah. If you recant it and keep doing what you're doing, well, there's no meaning.
Well, exactly. You have to set that intention, but you also have to do something about it. You can't just, say it and be like, hey, It's also about showing yourself love. Like if you're always constantly battling yourself and you're putting yourself down, and then you say, "Well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to walk in the mirror and say I love you," twice a day. That's not enough. You have to actually show yourself love. You have to actually start setting boundaries that are beneficial for you, and really taking more self-care into the situation, because so many of us, we put ourselves last.
Oh, yes. Well,
I did
and
that for
that's the thing
years.
too, is that, when you're first starting, right? If you're going to, like, let's take your example and say, I'm going to show myself more love. When you're first starting, and like positive mantras and everything else, it's very, very hard because you don't buy into it. And it might take you a number of false starts before you start realizing, okay, I really do need to do something to honor myself. I have to, and it's okay to have those false starts, right? So you continue with it, I am worthy and deserving. I am going to put myself first. And then you might find yourself, well, dang it, I did it again. I put myself last. It's okay. Right? It's like, don't beat yourself up to the point where you stop. It's like, it's okay. It's hard. It's really hard making new, empowered choices. It's hard. If it were easy, I would say nobody needs
Everybody
me.
be doing it.
Nobody needs me.
Exactly.
It's hard. And so it starts by changing your mindset, and then you start slowly to catch yourself. I think that's the important thing, is catch yourself going, oh, I just did it again. I put myself last. Oh, there again. I didn't stand up myself when I could have. You start seeing it. And then once you see it, then you're like, okay, next time I'm going to, and then eventually there has to be a next time where you do it. Yeah. Yeah, Leanne says it's very hard,
Oh
but I keep
man.
pushing myself. Yeah, start with that imperfect action. It's like imperfect action is better than no action, right? Because that shows intention. Everything is intention.
One of my friends in the comments has left a very deeply emotional comment, because she's gone through something painful. So I wanted to
Okay.
ask her question. She said, I was in a very abusive relationship previously. The lesson returned and I boundaried up and I kicked him out. But then he spiraled out of control and he's now passed on. So what and whose karma? I'm
Well,
guessing she wants to know more understanding. If she created karma by throwing him out, I don't think so.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. No.
No.
And, without going into her record, I'm going to preface this. I don't know for sure. It's conjecture. Okay. But this is the classic example of when you take aligned action to take your power back. There's always at least a 50-50 participation. It's never 100%, unless, in the case of, very extreme acts. But in a relationship, it's 50-50. It's not all about you. You absolutely cannot own what happens to that person or what that person does with themselves once you've empowered yourself. You absolutely cannot. That's where we get entangled in their karma. That now if she spends the rest of her life
If you leave me, I'm
feeling,
gonna hurt myself. I've heard that from so many
oh, that's
exes that
so
have said things like
manipulative.
that. It's a form of gaslighting in a way, anyway, to do that.
It's
But
horribly manipulative, and
yeah.
it is. And people who do that, I mean, that's karmic. It's like, so then you fall for that, and then you're always under their spell, and the spell is a real thing. And then, so once you get to a point where you're like, I've had enough, and the answer's no, and you need to leave. What an empowerment! That's a big power move. And so what that person does with that is their karma. That is their issue. And you cannot, so if she spends her time now feeling guilty, feeling shame, going, oh my God, that's creating more karma. It's keeping you connected in a really unhealthy way, and it must be released. It just has to be. That would be my suggestion. Now, of course, it's easier said than done. So you need to work through that, right? It's like, um, everyone has free will. Everyone has the power to choose. What their circumstances are outside of my control. I'm only in charge of me. I'm only incapable of affecting change for myself and no one else. I mean, you like change your beliefs so that you don't create more karma.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does indeed. It's just so many of us, I do clearings on people and we go down through
Yeah.
the protocol. Whenever I ask, is there any karma, any ancestral karma that we need to
Yes.
clear? It almost 99% of the time it says yes.
Yeah, there's almost always an ancestral component. And sometimes it can be really deep. And it's usually the heavy patterns of, how does your family deal with money and how does that resonate to your karma? How does your family deal with codependency and putting up with abuse? And
Codependency is a big one for many of us. Yeah.
yeah,
Same.
codependency.
It took me 3 years to heal my codependency. And you know what cured
Okay.
it?
What?
Having a very clingy partner.
Yeah.
I had the polar opposite. I was the clingy partner, and then I ended up having the opposite. I had a very domineering, clingy partner, and it's cured me of any codependency I had. I
See?
feel so much better now that I'm released
You,
from that.
you got what you needed. You got what you needed. And
Yeah.
so that's what we get. We get what we need, not what we want. We get what we need. And when you look at it from, but this is what I need, you look at what's happening from such a different vantage point. And bad things do happen too. Bad things happen, right? But we label it as such. We label it as bad. When in fact it's just the nature of what is. It's whatever energy is there is playing out. We put the judgment on it. Right?
Yeah.
We're judging that a situation that maybe happened with that person is horrible and awful and negative. And it's like, no, that could be exactly what that soul needed to move on in some way. So,
Everything
in
happens
ancestral,
for a reason anyway. I don't believe that there are any accidents, and I don't believe
oh
in
no,
coincidences personally.
no.
No.
I always find a reason. Anytime anyone comes to me with that, it's like, well, what? It's in there. Let's go find it. And there's always a reason. It's through the karmic law of connection. Right? There's lots and lots of universal laws in karmic law. I did a whole course on karmic and universal law. And so there's a karmic law of connection, which says everything is connected. What you do today affects your life tomorrow and affects your life in the future. What you did in a past life has set up where you are in your present life and will affect you in your future life unless you change it. It can't be any other way. And so ancestral karma is a huge component of that. And, or family curses. I've had clients who have, oh, there's a family curse around money. It's like, the only
You're
way
giving it power by saying that and
that
believing
there's
it.
a curse, yeah, is because you're perpetuating it. You don't have to buy into that. And so the first thing you need to do is stop giving it energy. And then you follow it up with empowered action. You start handling your money better, right? It's like, so how are you handling your money? Can you stay to a budget? Are you saving? Are you spending needlessly? Let's look at it, girl. Let's give it some hard looks. I mean, sorry, we've got to look at this, and then because you doing that is perpetuating the family curse. And all you're going to do is pass it on to your kids if you have kids. And then they're going to learn from you, right? So break.
Sometimes we choose to be born into those families so we can clear that
Totally.
energy. Sometimes we
What?
like
Yeah.
a challenge. Yeah, we're like, I'll take it. Why not?
It wouldn't be life if it weren't a challenge, right? It kind of goes back to
Yeah.
that concept of you choose to come into earth plane where it's highly negative, but it's beautiful for that reason, so that you have the free will to choose. And extracting yourself from negative situations is really, really hard. You have to be willing to be alone for a while. You have to be willing to drop relationships that are unhealthy. You have to be willing to leave a job, a career, a situation that doesn't serve you and be alone for a while you change. It's just part of it.
Being alone, I found I was so afraid of being alone, but then I realized how much more I enjoyed it. I'm like, I don't want to be. It's the opposite now. I'm like, it's like I'm happier alone now, to be honest.
Well, I am too,
Because
and I
it's
never thought
easier
I would.
on the energy.
Oh my gosh. Well, and because of my karma, I've been married a few times, and I think I'm a good person. I think I'm a good partner, which is why, it wasn't hard for me, I don't think, to find partners, but dang, I gave everything up for that person. And, that's bad on me. And then I would complain about it. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Look what
I
I'm
have the
doing.
same track record. Yep, exactly the same for me. Been married
And,
twice.
and I was afraid to be
Like,
right. It's like, well, I must have somebody. I can't live
yeah.
without somebody in my life. Oh my God. I'm now to a point where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to get married. I don't know. Like, I kind of like this. So,
I
you know,
joke that it would basically have to be me with a penis for me to be interested. It would have to be a male version of me for me to be interested at this point, because you're so happy with yourself when you get to that realization that you don't need anyone else around. There's nothing more freeing, in my opinion. I mean, no
yeah,
offense to those of you who are very happy in your
yeah,
marriages and are
yeah,
content
they're
with what
different.
you've got, but exactly, you've signed up for a different thing. Whereas me, I've given myself so much to other people that I didn't even know who I was in those marriages. I
Correct.
became somebody else, and it
Yep.
was not me.
And it puts you in very negative state when you're not aligned.
Mm,
I did a presentation recently on soul gifts and alignment. It's like you are meant to follow your passion. And if you veer from that, oh boy, do you get a slap upside the head from karma. And it's trying to and it's your guides, right? In your higher self going, hello, stop. And we don't usually learn unless it's painful. We don't wake up.
yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
There's so many of you that are going through similar things, and I feel
Yeah.
that many of you are finding this conversation quite cathartic, because we are having so much of us have been through these things, because it's
Yeah.
all about finding your self-worth. And much of these things are all about, just they boil down to the same lesson, just accepting yourself and knowing your true value and demanding that value, because you're the one that sets your value for yourself. Nobody else
Yeah.
can.
We teach people how to treat us. And it usually takes, and if you're born and you're young, it usually takes once you're old enough to leave that dynamic and create your own life based on how you want to live your life and your values. That's where you can really make that change. And I encourage it. And it's like, if you're looking for a life that you want, do it now. Life is short. Do it now. And the Akashic record. So again, it will have you moving faster, making those changes faster than you ever could on your own, because it's just knowledge. Right? And knowledge is power. It's like, oh my God, I see, and if you don't see that, you're just blind to it for decades and nothing
Mm-hmm.
ever changes. And that's sad to me. I
Yeah.
watched my mom never stand up for herself. She was very angry. I'm like, Mom, she was afraid. She was afraid to make change. So she felt stuck. And you're not stuck. We might, as women, been stuck hundreds of lifetimes ago, but we're not now.
Didn't even
So
have bank accounts until the 70s.
correct. Well, and I'm
So if you
teaching my
think
daughter.
about it, we've had what, 50 years of freedom, basically, if you think about it.
That's huge. My daughters, they're 18 and 21, and my 21-year-old in particular is very adamant about, well, why is this, why that? And I'm like, Manda, you have to remember, it hasn't been that long that we've had these rights. I mean, really,
We
speaking,
got the
and
right
so,
to vote, and honestly,
uh-huh,
it's just basically a participation trophy too, because voting, as we know, it doesn't really get you anywhere. But they wanted us to feel like we had power, and
yeah,
to feel like we had power. So in many ways, they do kind of shut us up by giving us a little
yeah,
something, but we have
yeah,
not taken what we truly
right.
deserve, and I feel that is our true empowered selves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about that for all of us. And women, and also men who were women in past lives, who were
Yeah.
very disempowered. And then they come in this lifetime and they're very like, why is this happening? That sometimes even they have these embattled relationships, and it's like, well, guess what? Guess where it started. You were a female in this. And they're like, wow. Okay. So it gives you that level of permission that you didn't give yourself before, because now you know. So
Yeah.
There you go.
See, we so for somebody that'd be interested in learning from you, where would be the best way to contact you? Because I'm sure there's going to be quite a few people now that are going to be trying to get a hold of you for for knowledge about
Sure.
this.
Well, my website is probably the best. It's pattyoliver.com, Patty Oliver.com. Like I said, I do
That one for
private
you guys.
coaching. I also have a course that I created on how to access your own Akashic record to do your own clearing work. And it's very in depth, following a process that I've created that works for me. Yeah.
Oh, your website looks lovely, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I did it myself.
Thanks the link, everybody.
I also have an oracle card deck. Oh my gosh.
You do. Would you be
Yes.
willing to do a card for the collective? We love those oracle cards. Do
I'd
you
have to go
mind?
get it. Can I get up for a second? I
Yeah,
didn't
of
bring it.
course.
Okay, hang on a second.
Yeah, we love those oracle cards. Let's see. I want to see. What does her deck look like? If you go to her website, oh, yep, there it is. Oracle card deck. Ooh, the Akashic Truth Oracle deck.
Yes. So here it is.
Beautiful.
Oh, you probably can't see it with the green screen.
No, switching back. There we go. No, yeah, I can see it now.
And I kind of created it based on how I do my reading sessions. So there are 6 life areas. There's romantic partnership, there's money and investments, friends and family,
Lovely.
health and wellness, career, business, and personal and spiritual growth. Because it's like, if you want to identify the root cause of your karma, it usually started in one of those life areas. And then I have a number of cards that are, action cards of probably what happened.
Oh, I love that you're helping people guide them for the actions they need to take.
Yes, of what's happening and what they need to do to change it. So what I could do is just pull a life area card, see what might be important for
Daniela's in the comments. Thank you, Daniela. Patty is going to be doing an event on a star for us, the true meaning of karma and what it's teaching you with Patty Oliver. That'll be tomorrow at 7 p.m.
We're going to go deep into what
set your alarms, guys. Make sure you're setting a timer or an event, whatever you got to put it in your calendar so you don't forget. Make sure you get a notification. You don't want to miss it. Okay.
So I pulled personal and spiritual growth, which I'm not surprised because I think a lot of times when I created the personal growth or spiritual growth card, it's all about like deep spiritual karmic patterns that just have been unresolved for lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes, right? So it's like spiritually, how do we need to grow? So that's the life area that the guides are picking. And then I'll just do a quick shuffle and find out where we are and what's going on. And this is available in my Etsy store, which is Soul Powered Healing, and through my website. And then I'm going to eventually get it on Amazon.
Find that for you guys.
And I'm also writing a book. It's going to come out in the fall. All kinds of fun stuff. So we have...
Here's her Etsy link for those of you who might want her Oracle deck. There you go.
So solitude. So solitude is the first card that to be drawn. And I think this is probably perfect as well because kind of like we talked about just a few minutes ago, it's like you need to be willing to go within, to be alone, to give yourself some alone time, to connect to your higher self and to your higher guidance. And, maybe just ask that one overriding question of what is the one thing that I need to know right now to help me create positive change. Sometimes I think it's a broad question, but everyone will get exactly what they need to know when they ask that question. It'll be different for everybody, right? And then I'll just draw one more, which is forgiveness. Okay. So sometimes we need to offer forgiveness. So this is for the group. So the guides know what everyone knows. So forgiveness can also mean forgiveness of self. Sometimes we just need to forgive ourselves for having the thoughts we have, for having the choices that we've made, for upholding negative boundary, all those things. Just start over again. right? Just release it, right?
Yes.
And then we can see if we can get one more. But this is what you can ask, and it's like, what are the steps I need to take? And then trust in yourself is the last one. So trust in your gut, trust in what you believe to be true for you, trust in your passions, trust in your instincts, and let that move you forward into new empowered action, even if you're scared. Do it anyway. How's
Beautifully
that?
said. Thank you so much, Patty.
You're
This has
welcome.
been such a wonderful, enlightening conversation, and I, I just know that this is going to heal some people a little bit today. Is just
I
to
hope
get them a
so.
little bit of understanding and a foundation to start their healing journey. And it's not easy taking those first few steps. And
It's
I'm
not.
really out of all of the things, that I think I've struggled with the most, it's all the confusion and the
Yes,
misinformation and all of the just the lies that are floating around us at all times. And knowing that the Akashic records is always there for any of us to sort through all that and to cut through the bullshit,
absolutely.
basically, and to
Yeah.
help us get to a far deeper level of understanding about ourselves. And I can't think of anything more blessed that we could thank the universe for having this, and for having teachers like you that are able to access this and teach others to do that. And it's
Yes.
just
Would love
thank
to.
you for everything that you're doing for the collective and for this community.
You're so welcome, and it's just such a pleasure. I just want it's helped me so much. I just want everyone to have the same experience. So, yeah, I mean, I can teach you, I can help you. I bring it on.
Bring it on. Love it. We're going to have you back sometime for another chat. And I'm
Okay.
very excited to see the event tomorrow. So thank you very much. I'm going to reiterate what Daniela says. Patty is so incredibly lovely and
Oh,
caring and grounded. We really appreciate you as a healer and a star educator.
oh,
So
my
thank you
pleasure.
from us. Really so grateful. So make sure
Thank
that you
you.
guys don't miss the event, okay? Tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Uh,
Yes. Or no, sorry, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. I was thinking of the
7
wrong one.
o'clock Eastern time.
Yes,
Yes.
7 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. So make sure that you guys set an alarm, set a timer, whatever you got to do so you don't miss it. Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Patty. I look
All
forward to
right.
chatting with you again. I
Sounds
love you
great.
all. See you all tomorrow. Have a great one. Bye.